Hi guys, it's Brooke here. I have a super quick favor to ask. When you have a moment, please take just a second to give this podcast a 5-star review. This will help me to continue the podcast and continue to bring these resources to the community. Thank you so much for that 5-star review.
Masking isn't just social effort. It's an emotional task that you pay every minute you're awake. It's not pretending to be polite. It's constantly overriding your nervous system in order to make other people feel comfortable. So through my autism diagnosis journey, I learned that for autistic people, masking means ignoring your own distress signals over and over and over again. So you smile when you're overwhelmed. You stay when your body's telling you to leave. You respond normally while you're internally navigating, negotiating your own survival. So over time, that disconnect doesn't just exhaust you. It does really erode your sense of self. And that emotional toll is that you stop knowing what you actually feel versus what you've learned you're supposed to feel. And when that goes on long enough, burnout isn't a possibility. It's inevitable.
Hey there, it's Brooke, and welcome to Finding Hope on the Spectrum, where I have heart-to-heart conversations with parents, professionals, and autistic individuals sharing personal insight and life experiences. Together, we dive deep into supports, programs, and stories that offer inspiration, insight, and most importantly, hope for the neurodiverse community. Before we begin with today's topic, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you know someone who this would be helpful for, please pass it along. Remember to always stay curious, be kind, and have an open heart. All right, I am very excited to have this conversation today and want to share a little bit about my guest before we get started, author and autistic adult, and I'm going to share a little bit about Chris and then we'll dive deep. So Chris Carazas is a Paraguayan American writer whose life has been shaped by migration, survival, and profound personal reckoning. Diagnosed as autistic in adulthood, he spent years masking while building a career in international development across Benin, Haiti, Mali, Bangladesh, and Madagascar, quietly navigating childhood displacement, the unraveling of faith, and an abusive marriage that nearly cost him his life. His debut memoir, Now That I'm Still Here, a memoir of ruin and resurrection, blends mythic lyricism with raw honesty, offering a powerful reflection on collapse, survival, and the courage to live after everything falls apart. Chris writes for those standing out in the ruins, in their own ruins, and for anyone learning that survival is more than endurance, it's choosing to stay. So welcome, Chris.
Hey, it's nice to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that we're going to have this conversation. I think it's really important to share your story. I think people can learn so much from your story. I really enjoyed getting to know you better when we met and chatted about what we were going to talk about today. And I want to start off with your memoir. Now, it's titled Now That I'm Still Here, a memoir of ruin and resurrection. And let's begin with sharing your mission. Before we dive into your story, we're going to go way back to the beginning, but let's talk about your mission and what led you to where you are today.
Well, before the book, the book is a story, but before the story came this mission, and it's something I call the Road for 2000, right? For every 2000, and it's a campaign that I started for people that lacked access to mental health care, because it's either a choice of spending $175 on groceries for you and your family or getting the help you need. And, that often trumps care. So this mission came about in terms of me committing to donating $6,000, split evenly between suicide prevention, autism support, and resources for people living with eating disorders. And I wanted the book to be more than just a reflection on survival, largely because I wanted it to actively support people who are still fighting to stay. So the title comes from a very literal place, right? There were moments where still here wasn't guaranteed. So the question became, if I'm still here, what responsibility comes with that? And so the road to 2000 was my answer. So it essentially turned survival into something more collective. So if I could summarize it in like a sentence or two, it's to prove that staying can ripple outward, that life which nearly ended can still generate care, resources, and hope for others who are navigating their own edge.
Yeah, incredible life's purpose that you've created from your own journey. And I know that you shared with me that you're going to be donating money once you reach a certain goal to these causes. And let's talk about that real quickly. And we'll make sure to talk about it at the end too, to remind our listeners that, by purchasing your book, you are actively contributing and helping these causes. And I think that's so important and powerful that you're taking your life experience and helping others with it with your own sharing. So go ahead and share just a little bit about your goal of what you're trying to achieve with selling your book and what you're going to do with that money.
Right. So for every 2,000 books I sell, it will allow me to unlock $6,000. So, and then $2,000 will be split evenly between initially I'm starting small. It's going to go for the $2,000 is going to go to the Association for Suicide Prevention here in Norfolk and Plymouth County. The second is going to be the Autism Speaks local chapter here in Massachusetts to provide support for and access to adults trying to learn about themselves on the and living on the spectrum. And the third is in honor of my lady who passed, and it's gonna go to the Massachusetts Eating Disorder Association to help people fighting eating disorders get the help they need as well. So my hope is that it'll happen every 2000, right? It's not going to happen once. It's going to happen every 2000, and hopefully it'll allow me to achieve a far greater scale from localized here in Massachusetts to New England, and then hopefully nationwide.
Fantastic. Well, let's make that happen. So I'm excited to have you on and be able to help spread that word today. So I think it's a great mission and powerful and so important. And I'm excited to have you on and share a little bit more. So let's go back to the beginning and share some of your early memories of recalling challenges that you now know to be due to being autistic, but at the time you may not have known.
Yeah. So the memoir forced me to look back. Even when I got diagnosed, it forced me to look back at my childhood. And the signs were there very early, even though I didn't have the language for them at the time. Like we spoke last time or offline, I grew up overseas, and my childhood involved a lot of moving. Every little move felt like a catastrophe, not because I was scared of leaving or where I was going to, but because it often meant that my routines changed overnight, and I couldn't do the same things in the same order anymore. And that felt destabilizing in a way that I couldn't really verbalize. And I also had a lot of sensory things that I assumed everyone experienced. Certain noises would feel unbearable, even when no one else in the room seemed to notice them at all, like the sound of people chewing, the tapping of a pencil on a desk or chalkboard. And crowded spaces felt overwhelming. It caused me to feel this overwhelmed very quickly. And as a room filled with more people, like the classroom, my anxiety would spike. My body would tense, and I'd feel like I needed to escape even when nothing bad was happening. People were just coming into class, or people are just food shopping, and it's just crowded. And at the time, I just thought that I was being very difficult or overly sensitive. It wasn't till much later that I understood that these weren't really character flaws. They were autistic traits that went unrecognized, especially because I had learned to mask them in order to function in constantly changing environments.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you understand it better now, and it makes more sense, and you have that greater sense of self and understanding it. I'm sure that was really quite a relief to understand that this is what you were experiencing in that confusion. And you mentioned masking. So let's talk about, what masking meant to you and that pressure you felt to respond a certain way. And how did that play out for you?
Well, Masking for me was survival before I knew it had a cost. Masking for me meant constantly monitoring myself, like my tone, my facial expressions, my timing, my reaction. I learned that very early that the safest way to exist was to respond the way other people expected, not the way I actually felt, like the normal people. And over time, that pressure created a split. On the outside, I was functioning. At least that's what people saw. All right, I was
Yeah.
agreeable, capable. On the inside, that's what I in my book called the dark passenger. Like it's not something evil, but something exhausted. It's that voice, the internal monitoring voice, and it helps carry all the suppressed reactions, the overwhelm, the anger, the grief that never really had permission to surface, right? And so masking slowly disconnected me from my own internal signals. And I stopped trusting my body when it said like, hey, this is too much, or this doesn't feel safe. Or so instead, like I would defer to the mask. And by the time, everything kind of fell apart, I wasn't burnt out because I was weak. I was burnt out because I had been living as performance for decades, right?
Yeah.
Decades.
Wow.
So masking kept me functional, but at the cost of my sense of self.
That is an absolutely excellent way to share that experience. I haven't heard it presented that way before, and I'm so grateful that you were able to share your own reality for it to help others understand what that felt like and what that means to mask. And I think it's just so important for all autistic individuals to have the opportunity to be themselves and to feel valued and heard for their own contributions and their own opinions, and how exhausting that must have been to live that many years in that way.
That was quite exhausting.
I can't imagine. And I'd love for you to share, if you could wish, one thing for people to understand about this emotional toll of masking, what would it be? I think for those that aren't even, some people may not even be aware of that term and are learning about it as we're talking about it. So what would you wish for people to really understand what the emotional toll takes for those that feel like they need to mask?
I would say that masking isn't just social effort. It's an emotional task that you pay every minute you're awake. It's not pretending to be polite. It's constantly overriding your nervous system in order to make other people feel comfortable. So through my autism diagnosis journey, I learned that for autistic people, masking means ignoring your own distress signals over and over and over again. So you smile when you're overwhelmed. You stay when your body's telling you to leave. You respond normally while you're internally navigating, negotiating your own survival. So over time, that disconnect doesn't just exhaust you. It does really erode your sense of self. And that emotional toll is that you stop knowing what you actually feel versus what you've learned you're supposed to feel. And when
Yeah.
that goes on long enough, burnout isn't a possibility, it's inevitable.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's such a testament to why I personally believe it's so important that we don't, as professionals, impose our beliefs and our opinions on our clients, that we give them opportunities to share in their own way. And, I think that's still an ongoing discussion in our field. But, I just am so grateful that you shared it in that way. It's so powerful and amazing that it really takes you further away from understanding yourself and who you are and what makes you unique and what gifts you have to bring, and what makes you human. And I think you have the right, every person has the right to experience that. And so I just love how you shared that. I thank you for sharing that in the way that you did. I think it's really powerful and so true. Makes a lot of sense. And I know that you mentioned burnout, and that's another thing that, we hear a lot in the field, but something that may not be as common for everybody. So let's take a minute just to share, how burnout plays out for you and your understanding of it for autistic individuals, and, when that happened for you in your life.
Yeah, I mean, burnout is different for everybody, right? And For me, burnout didn't show up in my life as one dramatic moment. It never does, right? It creeps in quietly and then takes over everything at once. And for me, like in the past, it looked like my nervous system finally refusing to cooperate. Things I have always pushed through stopped being possible. So things like my tolerance for noise, conflict, unpredictability, even basic decision making collapsed. I was constantly exhausted, emotionally flat, and anxious in a way that didn't respond to willpower anymore. What made it confusing is that on the outside, I still looked functional. I was working, showing up, saying the right things, but internally, I was running on fumes. Years of masking, self monitoring, ignoring my limits caught up with me all at once. But burnout wasn't really about weakness or lack of resilience. It was a cumulative cost of living in override mode. So basically, my brain and my body essentially said, "Hey, bro, we're done pretending." And once that happened, there was no pushing through anymore. I had to either listen or disappear. And it was just very hard to recenter and recalibrate myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And were there early signs, now that you can look back on it, were there early signs for burnout? For those that are listening that might be like, oh, that might be me, or that might be my child. Were there any telltale signs you could look back on now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost was increased rigidity in an unwillingness to meet the world halfway and being flexible with the world around me. There was shrinking tolerance for sensory input. I was chronically tired and had no energy to even just take my dog on a walk. And and there was a huge piece of emotional withdrawal. None of it felt dramatic at the time. It just felt like I was failing at things I used to handle and used to handle well. So in reality, my nervous system was already in distress long before I understood what burnout meant and what it was.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about it from a nervous system perspective, because I think that's so important to understand. And, I think that the more we understand the nervous system and the toll it can take if you are experiencing these challenges, and how it can become depleted from these challenges, I think it's important, because a lot of times people misunderstand that rigidity or behavior or resistance, and as a child being disrespectful or naughty, any kind of label you want to put on it. But it really comes down to the nervous system struggling
Right.
and needing support. So I can tell that you have a lot of self-awareness and really understand it now, which is huge, for your life's experience.
Took a lot of therapy to
Yeah, good for
learn that
you.
self-awareness.
Yeah, not everybody, pushes through to that level of deep understanding, and good for you for making that happen for yourself. And we're going to talk about that and your healing journey. But let's talk about what brought you to write this memoir. Why did you find it important to tell your story in such an honest and unfiltered way?
If you had told me back in February I was going to be an author, I would have laughed at your face. I would have laughed at anyone who would have told me I was going to be a published author. And what brought me to write this book was Ava. She was the lady I was seeing after my life collapsed. And it didn't really begin, the intent wasn't really to write a book. It began, well, she got sick in March. And I had gone through this enormous amount of abuse that she really didn't know the full extent of, mainly because I was trying to protect her, but I was also trying to protect myself from anything. Like, I was trying to protect her from projecting what happened to me in the past, and I was trying to protect my story because I didn't want her to know what happened, and I was afraid that she would leave. So when she got sick, I started writing little short stories to her as a confession. I was trying to explain why I was so tightly wound, why loving me could feel hard at times, and how much of that came from untreated PTSD after years in an abusive marriage. There were things I carried quietly, things that I never really quite fully articulated. So writing was my way of telling her the truth, and as a deal to her to stay, right? So at first, like I said earlier, I at first imagined this as a series of short pieces I could read to her at the hospital while she was on a ventilator. And I planned to end it with a commitment that once she got out, I would finally do the work of healing from what I had been carrying. She never got to hear it. She passed away before, I finished her chapter, so she couldn't hear much of any of it. And after that, the writing became something else. I was told to, my sister saw what I had written, encouraged me to finish the story. I thought that she was being kind. She had her mother-in-law's family read it, and they have a publishing background, and they said, "Hey, finish this. Like you have a very compelling story." So as I finished it, I tried to keep the rawness in it because I wanted people around me, especially my family, to understand what I had actually lived through.
Yeah.
Not the sanitized version, but the daily emotional gut punches, the quiet erosion, the ugliness of it. So another reason why I kept it so raw and honest is because I wanted the reader to feel it, not to be overwhelmed, but giving a voice to what abuse really looks like, but also to finally see what survival inside that kind of environment costs. So I also wanted them to understand how brutal it can be and how someone can still make it through. So the honesty, like, it wasn't for shock, it was for truth and for proof that even the ugly can be survived.
Hi friends, I wanted to tell you about something super exciting. I have been working behind the scenes on creating online courses and will be kicking us off with my first ever live workshop titled 5 Steps to Connected Communication. I truly cannot wait to share this information with you on January 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. In Connected Communication, my goal is to help you move from feeling uncertain or stuck in reactive patterns to feeling clear, confident, and equipped to communicate in ways that build trust, connection, and a guiding relationship. This isn't about scripts or compliance or even fixing behavior. It's about understanding the why beneath communication and learning how to show up in ways that support nervous system regulation, emotional safety, and genuine connection. We'll talk about how communication is so much more than words, how pacing, presence, shared experiences, and emotional attunement shape connection. You'll walk away with practical tools you can use right away, but more importantly, a new lens that helps you feel grounded and empowered in your role. Whether you're a parent wanting a more connected relationship with your autistic child, or a professional looking to support families in a more relational and compassionate way, this workshop is designed to meet you where you are and help you move forward with clarity and hope. You don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to do this perfectly. You just need the support, and that's exactly what this space is meant to offer. I would love to have you join me live for the Connected Communication Workshop on January 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And don't worry if you can't make it live and still want access to the workshop. The recording will be available to you within 24 hours, and you will have it for a lifetime. You can learn more and register using the link in the show notes or visit my website at findinghopeonthespectrum.com. I can't wait to connect with you there.
Yeah. And I would say you are going to help so many other people because many people do go through challenges of abuse and need that kind of hope and inspiration to see that you can survive, and not only survive, but thrive, come out on the other end, and be successful in life. And that's certainly what you're doing. And so I think that's just so powerful and so vulnerable. And I think, you're going to help a lot of people through this process. So you mentioned the words ruin and resurrection in your book and title. And what did ruin look like in your life, and how would you define resurrection now?
I think this is a powerful question because for me, ruin wasn't a single catastrophic moment. It was an erosion, right? It looked like living in a constant state of self-doubt, fear, hypervigilance. It was being told repeatedly that I was defective, a burden, an embarrassment, and slowly internalizing that as truth. It was masking until I no longer trusted my own perceptions, my body, or my instincts. From the outside, everything was fine. No one suspected a thing. On the inside, I tried to disappear. And resurrection, as I understand it now, isn't a dramatic comeback or a return to who I was before. I'll never be the same. It's quieter than that. It's the gradual rebuilding of trust with myself, learning to listen to my nervous system instead of overriding it, creating a life that doesn't require constant self-betrayal to maintain. So resurrection for me now isn't about erasing ruin. It's about surviving it and choosing to live differently because of it.
Amazing. Well, I just have to tell you that I'm just so grateful that you are here today and that you have so much to offer and that you matter and your instincts matter, your opinion matters. You're here for a reason, you're a gift and you're meant to be here. And I'm grateful you overcame that and got to this place.
And that's also the message I want other people to hear too, that have ever been in my shoes, that they matter too. It sucks. It's hard. That coming out of this isn't easy. It's not linear. It's messy as hell, but you matter nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I think that message can ripple outwards to many of us that have been in those shoes too.
Absolutely. And incredibly important for people to hear that message that are dealing with these kinds of challenges. And the one thing that stood out to me too is that I want to just take a pause on is that you were not trusting your instincts. And I think, gosh, that's so powerful that as professionals, we have to be aware of, not that this is from professionals, but just in general, that it's so important for our clients that we're serving to be able to trust their instincts and for the parents to trust their instincts too, and how that can be taken down with certain feedback or certain directions. And I think, we want all of our clients and individuals, I want all that for all individuals that are struggling with autism too, to understand that they do have those instincts and they're powerful, and to listen to them and to use them to guide you. And that's just so important in life, and important that we don't take that away inadvertently. So was there a moment when you realized you might not just survive, but you would rebuild in your journey?
There wasn't a single cinematic moment where everything shifted. What changed was something much smaller and much more honest than that. I realized I might be able to rebuild when staying stopped feeling like a temporary measure and started feeling more like a choice. When I began taking small steps that weren't about getting back to normal, but about creating something safer than what I had known before, right? That realization came very slowly. It showed up in moments where I noticed I wasn't just enduring the day, but actually participating in it. So that, and asking for help, letting people show up, making decisions based on what I could sustain and not what I could force. So rebuilding didn't begin with confidence at all. It began with permission. Permission to stop fighting myself and start building a life that didn't require me to disappear in order to function.
This show is brought to you by Therapeutic Approach to Growth. Therapeutic Approach to Growth helps families with relationship and behavioral needs. Their holistic programs are individualized to honor and respect each family and their autistic son or daughter's sense of self through programs such as relationship development intervention, naturalistic ABA, and animal-assisted services. If you're finding yourself frustrated or discouraged with your current behavioral programs and would like to see more long-term meaningful growth for you and your family, then contact TAG today at www.tagforgrowth, that's TAGFORGROWTH.com, to learn more about how to schedule a consultation or how they can offer you the help your family needs, whether in person, remotely, or in a school setting. Again, that's www.tagforgrowth.com.
Yeah, that's a huge awareness shift for sure. That's going to change how you respond. And so let's talk about that. I know you mentioned when we chatted before that, healing is not a linear process, and it wasn't linear for you. And I'd love for you to share just your experience with healing and who helped you along the way.
Yeah, and that's the misconception that I at least I found when I got help. The healing was packaged in a nice little box. You do this in a sequenced set of steps. You do this, and this, and you'll be fine. But it's been anything but linear for me. It moved forward. There were times it stalled, it doubled backed, and sometimes it felt like it disappeared altogether. There were stretches where I thought I was doing better, followed by days where old patterns and pain resurfaced. What I had to learn was that this wasn't failure, the non-linearity of it, right? It was actually how healing really works in real life. I didn't do it alone at all. It's a team effort. I was supported in different ways by different people. One of them was my therapist. There's no shame in getting therapy and seeking help, but she helped me make sense of what was happening instead of judging it. So, it's the simple things like being reminded that recovering isn't about being fixed. It's about becoming safer inside your own body and mind. Another was my sister, who helped me in more practical and grounded ways. She showed up when I couldn't even organize myself, and she helped create a structure that made healing a little bit more clear through action that I didn't even have to earn her support by being okay first, right? And there were friends like my pickleball crew that I eventually got to meet. They just showed up and played pickleball. They didn't care what I had gone through. They're just like, hey, let's play. There were friends like my best friend Jenny, who stayed present in the middle of it all, not trying to rescue me or rush me forward, but helping me stay connected to the world when it would have been easier just to disappear. There was Ava, who showed up unexpectedly in my life, who said, "You're autistic. You want to go to the beach now?" And, she didn't bat an eye about who I was. She just wanted to know what we could be. So through all of this, it just kind of reinforced the learning that healing doesn't move in a straight line because people don't. It happens through relationship, patience, repetition.
Yes.
The presence of others didn't fix me at all. None of it that fixing comes from me. But it helped me stay long enough to do the work.
Yeah, incredible. And it's so true. I mean, relationships, meaningful relationships are what it's all about and really what brings us joy and happiness the most in life. And it sounds like you had a really wonderful support team and everybody played a different part in that healing process for you. And
yeah, I forgot to give a shout out to my dog. My dog was also helpful.
I was waiting for your dog to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You have a German Shepherd, right? Or is it a Shepherd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's 13 now. But
Okay.
yeah, it's, I think without her, I wouldn't have been able to meet people because, she has needs so she forced me to go outside in the sunshine and meet people.
Yeah.
And so that was also a nice tether.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That can be so healing. What would you say to someone who feels ashamed about their healing process that may not look inspirational or linear, that's in the thick of it?
Oof. I would say don't judge yourself. Like, literally, it's a lot of work. It's overwhelming. A lot of the times it's like looking up at Mount Everest and it's instant overwhelm, right? And there is no shame in taking the time you need to fix yourself. There is no timeline. It could take you 5 years. It could take you 10 years. It could take you 2 days, 3 days. Like, don't let the fact that you're still hurting now get in the way of the end result. And this is the thing I always tell people. Like, I have these thought provoking conversations where, like, do we really heal from things, right? Or does the burden of it just become more bearable, right? Like, and I was talking to Ava's dad one day. It's kind of like getting a knee replacement. He had his knee replaced. I don't know how long ago, but the knee's fine, right? New knee, but there's a scar there,
Yeah.
right? He can walk now, but there'll always be traces of your past there. And some people have to relearn how to walk after a knee replacement. And there is no timeline. So if you're not okay today, not okay tomorrow, that's okay. You just have to be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Incredibly important. And I know you've talked about this idea of taking small steps, and I think that that can be really helpful when it does feel like Mount Everest, to have that mindset that you're just going to take small steps rather than having these big, profound changes in a day. But these small steps really lead to a big change in the long run. And let's talk a little bit about those small steps and what were those small steps for you?
I think in big picture first, small steps, I think for anyone is just coming out of this are essential, because big transformations were never meant, like, for me, these small steps were essential because big transformations were never available to me in the moments that mattered most. When you're on survival mode, you don't need a vision. You need the next tolerable action. So for me, like, healing didn't start with a breakthrough. It started with very small, very unglamorous decisions. Getting through the next hour, going outside, asking for help instead of isolating or moping or brooding, learning how to listen to my body again after years of ignoring it. Those steps aren't impressive, I know, but they kept me alive. Small steps also rebuilt trust in myself. After years of masking, after years of burnout, my system didn't believe in big promises anymore. It needed consistency, it needed safety, and proof that I wouldn't stop pushing past its limits. Healing didn't happen because I transformed overnight. I'm still transforming almost 2 years after this. It happened because I kept choosing the smallest possible action that moved me towards staying. And over time, those steps add up. And they did for me. And so, and it wasn't to like a new version of myself, but a version that could finally breathe.
Yeah, it's huge. I think it's so important because it can sometimes be so overwhelming to try to tackle this healing journey that people are on, and so sometimes it can lead to resistance or not trying, and because it's so big. But if you take this idea, this approach to it of small steps, each day you just look what is manageable and what's attainable for you in that moment, and you learn to trust yourself that you are capable of achieving these things. And they are, even though they're small, they're big deals. They can be a very big deal to achieve. And that builds that confidence that you can do it again and again. And then you can do a little more. And it's amazing how that works into something life-changing.
There was, I don't know if you have ever heard of the YouTube channel Goalcast, but there was one little clip of an admiral giving advice to the graduating class of Texas A&M that year. I don't know what year it was released, but his first point was start your day by making your bed, right? So if you want to be successful, start by making your bed. It sounds like
Yeah.
a joke, but his point, he literally clarified, by making your bed that prepares you for the next task and the next task and the next task. And no matter how crappy your day was at the end of the day, you get to go to the bed that you made. And that should give you hope for the next day.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard that there's a book written. It might have been by him, but I heard there was a book written about that theory. And I was actually thinking about it this weekend as I was making my bed, and I just didn't want to. I had other things I wanted to do, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to make my bed because it's going to feel good to have that bed made and walk in the room and see it as a reminder that I accomplished that task. And it's so true. And you can even start with just that simple task of waking up every morning and making your bed, and that will get you jump started into achieving the next task. I love that you shared that. It's been fresh on my mind recently. Okay, so let's talk about, what would you say would be the most important lessons you've learned that you hope other autistic adults or families can carry with them?
I think first and foremost that autistic people aren't failing at life. I think that's the main thing. We're often failing inside environments that were never built with our nervous systems in mind. So for autistic adults, I hope they carry this, right? Needing support isn't weakness, and things like accommodations in the professional setting isn't a moral failing. If something costs you everything to maintain, it's not sustainable, no matter how normal it looks from the outside. For families, I hope that they understand that behavior is communication. Overwhelm, withdrawal, rigidity, or shutdown aren't character flaws, they're signals. When families respond with curiosity instead of correction, safety becomes possible. And safety is where that growth actually happens. And acceptance doesn't mean giving up on someone. It means giving them a foundation, a solid one to stand on.
Incredible. I could write down all of those quotes that you just shared. Those are all powerful messages, very powerful and so important for the community, to have awareness around. So thank you for sharing that. And, if someone is just beginning to unmask or to recover from burnout, what is one belief you hope they can release?
I hope, my sincere and genuine hope, is that they can release the belief that they have to earn rest or understanding by first proving how capable they are. Many autistic adults were taught that worth comes from endurance, that if we can just push through a little bit more, then we'll deserve care. Burnout literally exposes how dangerous that belief is. You don't need to justify your limits. You don't need to perform recovery correctly. Rest, support, and accommodation aren't rewards for good behavior. They're prerequisites for healing. I also hope that they release that sense of letting go of the need to be impressive. That for me, letting that go, that need of trying to be impressive to the world around me, was the hardest part of my recovery. And I felt like that need to impress because I felt like I was always on that back foot, that I wasn't good enough. But so letting that part go was also the most necessary for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. Okay, well, as we close, for anyone listening who feels like they're in the middle of ruin and wondering if resurrection is possible, what message of hope would you want them to hear today?
Oof. I have a long list, but I want people to know that resurrection doesn't arrive the way we're taught to expect it. It doesn't come as clarity or relief or the sudden feeling of hope. Most of the time, it starts with things that are much smaller than that. Resurrection begins the moment you decide to stay, the moment you choose not to disappear, even when you don't see a future yet. You don't need to believe that things will get better. You don't need a plan. You just need to remain long enough for the next small thing to happen. Ruin has this thing of convincing you that what you're feeling is permanent and personal. It isn't. It's a state, not a sentence. The fact that, you're still here, I'm still here, still listening, still breathing matters more than anyone realizes right now. So resurrection is not about becoming who you were before or who you think you need to be. It's about discovering that staying, however imperfect and however honest, is already an act of defiance. And sometimes that's where hope begins.
Beautifully said. I love it. It's so powerful. I just am so grateful that you were here. You're sharing your story. I want to get your story out there more and more. I think it's incredibly powerful and can really help a lot of people. I really do. And I want you to have a chance to share how people can find your book, your website. We'll include it in the show notes, of course, and anything else you'd like to share that's on the horizon for you. And again, a little reminder about your goal would be great. We're going to get that goal met.
Yeah. So you can find me in a few ways. You can go to Carazas.com. That's where you can buy the book. I'm also on Substack. I write on Substack as a companion to the book. It goes a lot more in depth and makes sense of the book a lot more clearer because I designed the book to be very nonlinear on purpose because healing is very nonlinear. So my Substack provides that thread. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold, not just Amazon, not just in the US. It's available worldwide at any bookstore of your choice. And it helps support my mission of, for every 2,000 books sold, I'll be able to donate $2,000 to three organizations with 3 different missions: suicide prevention, autism support, and people that are struggling with eating disorders. And I hope that it's not just a one-time thing. It becomes a cyclical 2,000s, and it scales nationwide and hopefully worldwide too.
Fantastic. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being here today. You were so inspirational, and I just really appreciate you sharing your story in such an authentic and real way. It's going to create a lot of healing for a lot of people, I have no doubt, and just grateful for your testimony. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. Thank you for being a kind host.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be in touch.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm dancing on the edge again. The wind is calling my name. I'm dancing on the edge again. This time I'm not looking back, babe. You can change me, you can tell me down. I'll be echoes in every place I find. I break the molds with rebels mind. I'm a hurricane of free born mind.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only. The content shared is based on the experiences, opinions, and perspectives of the hosts and their guests and should not be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. The discussions and topics covered are intended to foster understanding and awareness of autism therapies, but are not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Before making any decisions regarding therapies or treatments, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare provider who can provide personalized recommendations based on your unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts, guests, and producers are not responsible for any consequences, damages, or outcomes arising from the use or application of any information during the show.